Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, our crowd-funded, crowd-driven feature where we respond to your questions on everything from history to political philosophy, culture, economics, all those things that concern us in our efforts to build a good society together.
All right, here's a good one about Western civilization, saying that I think you would agree that it is both a good thing and distinct from and superior to other varieties that the human race has come up with. Most people, this is Alistair suggesting this, would place its roots in classical Greece around 500 BC. So here's the question. Why there? Why then? Why them?
It's a great question to which the answer must in some degree be explaining after the fact, not laying out general rules for how Western civilizations arise. There is a remarkable, even miraculous quality to it that should not be overlooked. It does have its roots, in part, in classical Greece, and there are many factors that seem to point toward freer societies arising there. The geography of Greece, lending itself to small-scale city-states in constant contact with one another through trade, but reasonably militarily secure. The need for small-scale societies to organize themselves for defense purposes on the basis of a citizenry in arms. Its proximity to the Fertile Crescent. So much of world history is explained by the fact that at the end of the last glaciation, the most cultivatable plants and animals and the most favorable agricultural land are found in Europe and West Asia, around the eastern end of the Mediterranean, the Tigris, Euphrates, Nile, and so on. But there is more to it than that, because the West has been described as when Athens met Jerusalem in Rome. And you cannot leave out of the story the Greek tradition of free inquiry, of questioning of authority, of philosophy, of a rational approach to life, of a strange calmness in their approach to questions that elsewhere in the world would produce ferocious agitation and riots, not that the Greeks were perfect, is joined to ethical monotheism coming out of the Hebrew Bible and then, of course, in the Hellenistic world, Christianity. And people sometimes have this odd idea that Christianity's success can be explained by superstition and backwardness. But the eastern end of the Mediterranean, where it enjoyed its earliest triumphs, and then the Roman Empire, where it successfully spread despite suppression by the authorities, was the most cosmopolitan society the world had ever seen. And that, again, comes back in large measure to this Greek emphasis on philosophy and rational inquiry. Christianity has an enormous apparatus of rational theology, which is largely absent from other religions. And then you get Rome, which is not merely the political location in which Greek philosophy and Hebrew monotheism met, but also a place with this rule of law based on respect for the rights of the individual. There was a famous story in the Bible when Paul is about to be tortured in Roman Palestine, and then he utters those three fateful words, Quibus Romanus sum. I am a Roman citizen. And immediately, the implements of torture are put away, and the mechanisms of Roman law kick in. And so this understanding of the metaphysical importance of the individual, of the importance, even the sanctity of the individual's free thought, and his rights against the state are all necessary to create this thing that we call Western civilization. And then, even weirder, in Britain, it meets Teutonic tribal self-government of the sort commented on by Tacitus, and you get the effective institution of parliamentary self-government, of which the American congressional system is deliberately a version. All of this is required to create a civilization in which legally, theologically, and morally, the rights of the individual are respected. And that is, even small things, in Roman law, the Romans never had any sort of abolitionist movement. They somehow never really saw what was wrong with slavery. But once they started believing that man was made in the image of God, they ceased to brand slaves on the face. There is something about the inherent conception of the individual as worthwhile that brings all of this into a package. And I will say one more thing. People often talk about other parts of the world as though all civilizations basically follow the same path, and it's just a question of where they are on it. But it's not true. Western civilization is unique as a blessing to those who enjoy it and as a standing challenge to those who don't. Why do you not do things in this way? And this can produce ferocious backlashes, for instance, Islamism or communism. But the question never goes away, because only a civilization based on the sanctity of the individual can be a good civilization. And sooner or later, everyone, everywhere in the world must meet this challenge? Is man made in the image of God? And if so, do our social and political institutions reflect that status? Only in the West, by and large, with lamentable exceptions, but always as a driving theme and a dynamic force, has the answer to that question been an unequivocal yes. And Greece has a lot to do with it. But it's not just Greece. It's also Athens. It's also Jerusalem. It's also Rome. And it's also Britain. All of these things are necessary to create what we have today.
All right. Thanks for that. Folks, if you would like to play along and ask your question of the professor, the URL on your screen will take you to a page where everything is explained. Thanks, and see you next time.